Title 24 Overview.
The reference materials for this section include the Building Energy Efficiency Standards as well as a Residential Compliance Manual. Both of these documents can be found in the Files section up there in the upper right hand corner. You can download those directly from there, or in the future, if you would need to get these, you can go directly to the source, which is the Energy Commission's website. We provided the links for where these documents can be found on the CEC's website.
So the overall goal is to gain a broad understanding of the California Title 24 code and how it interacts with national standards, other state codes, and local jurisdiction. So you as a HERS rater need to be aware of Title 24 because it drives everything that you do as a HERS rater. Title 24 is much broader than just HERS inspections. HERS inspections are part of Title 24, but that is not all that there is in regards to the building energy efficiency standards. So what you do as a HERS rater, it's a small portion of what Title 24 actually covers. This is everything that we're going to be covering in this particular PowerPoint. It's a fairly long PowerPoint, 10 different sections. We'll be covering in this particular order. Some of these items might intertwine with one another because they are somewhat interrelated in some aspects, but for the most part, this is the general order of presentation.
The 2019 Title 24 Energy Code will be effective on any permit applied for on January 1st, 2020 or after. This code is going to be approximately 15% more stringent than the previous code statewide. Now this is going to vary depending on which climate zone you're in. Some of them will be more stringent than others, but your average is going to be about 15%.
These are just some key definitions for reference. They're just here for you to refer back to. They're going to be in your manual as well, obviously, where this PowerPoint presentation is included. You'll be referring to some of these items, or most of these items, throughout the presentation as well. So you just need to be aware with what they are. HERS stands for Home Energy Rating System. The AER is the Appliance Efficiency Standard. ASHRAE regulates mechanical ventilation requirements and indoor air quality requirements. ASHRAE itself stands for American Society of Heating, Refrigerating, and Air Conditioning Engineers. The CEC is the California Energy Commission. We'll be talking about energy budgets and energy credits. NACA, which is what I mentioned a second ago, is the National Appliance Efficiency Conservation Act. So that is the regulation on a national level that regulates appliance efficiency. And then we'll be talking about time-dependent valuation, and then Title 24 and Title 24 Part 6. We mentioned that. So moving forward, we'll be referring back to some of these items as we go along. So in order to be compliant with Title 24, there's two methods of compliance. And these are the two. So you have the prescriptive method and you have the performance method. Regardless of what you do in California, these are the only two approved methods that you're going to use to achieve Title 24 compliance. So the prescriptive method is the Title 24 when it's achieved by following preset Title 24 specifications and mandatory requirements based on the climate zone that you're building in. The performance method, it's achieved by having a Title 24 energy analyst demonstrate a project's Title 24 energy compliance by analyzing the building using CEC approved Title 24 software. So basically anybody can use the prescriptive method. There are preset tables, which I'll show you an example of here in a sec. Basically, as long as you transfer the correct values from the tables to the forms and then submit the form properly, you're able to calculate, or I guess to preset your Title 24. When you're using the performance method, an energy analyst actually has to run the building design through software, and the software will determine whether that's a compliant plan or not. The difference between the two mainly is the fact that with the prescriptive method, you can't trade anything off. You have to do exactly what the tables say based on the climate zone that you're in. With the performance method, aside from the mandatory measures, which you always have to do in both prescriptive and performance, you can trade certain items on and off, or you can increase and decrease certain values to customize the design to what you want to do. But again, you have to have an energy analyst running the software on the plan. It's not automatic. So the first way to do it is the prescriptive method, like I mentioned earlier, and the prescriptive method uses package A, prescriptive package A, which I'll show you in a sec. Those are the tables that I talked about in the previous slide. So in the old code, there used to be multiple packages. So you would have package C, D, and E, and each package would have different values and they would be applicable to different scenarios. However, in the 2013 code, they condensed it down to one package. It's package A, and that's the only table you can pick from in order to calculate Title 24. I shouldn't say calculate Title 24. Determine Title 24 compliance using the prescriptive method. And this is what the table looks like. So this is just a piece of the table. Obviously, there's multiple pages to this table that cover every single building component within a home. As you can see from the top of the table, you'll see the climate zones 1 through 16. So the way these tables are used, you determine the climate zone that you're in, and then by going down that particular column, you identify the values for different building components in that particular home. As long as you match or exceed what those values are, you meet Title 24. So the only thing the person would need to do in this particular scenario is transfer those values to the CF1R, and we'll talk about the forms in a sec. And then those forms will be submitted to the building jurisdiction for permit application, just like anything else. Now, the other option is the performance method, and like I said, the performance method is based on what the builder, or the client, I should say, tells the building analyst, the energy analyst, to design the building as. So the performance method is always based on the prescriptive package requirements. The only thing that the performance method allows you to do is to offset some of those requirements by making up values and efficiencies somewhere else. You always have to follow the mandatory requirements no matter what, but just to give you an example, you might be able to bring down installation values by raising the efficiency of the windows or the roofing information or something else along the line of energy efficiency. So that's how it works. And then it's based on the standard design, which is the prescriptive package. And then once the energy analyst changes whatever it is that they change, they come up with the proposed design, and that's the design that's turned into the building department for permit application. And either way, whether they go performance or whether they go prescriptive, it takes us down to our documentation process, and the documentation process and the forms are the same. It doesn't matter. So we'll talk about those in a sec. And now we're going to talk about, in fact, the compliance documentation. So the compliance documentation and its process is a requirement to receive a building final. A building inspector cannot issue a certificate of occupancy unless all necessary compliance documents, which are the CF1Rs, the CF2Rs, and the CF3Rs, have been completed, and we'll talk about what those forms are in a sec. Electronic registration of the forms is only required when HERS measures are required. So we're going to be talking about the forms, and you as a HERS rater will have to upload those forms into the CHIRS registry. However, that's only required from you as the HERS rater when there are in fact HERS measures required on the project. Now, from a brand new construction, residential new construction standpoint, a lot of the HERS measures are mandatory, so you're always going to see HERS measures in this code cycle. However, in the additions and alterations, you might still run into situations where there are no HERS measures required. So if there are no HERS measures required, electronic upload of the forms in the registry is also not required. And the only thing that would still be required would be the paper forms turned into the building department for application and then final. But again, if there is no HERS measures required, you're not even going to be around that project to do anything about it, because your inspections are not going to be required. All permits requiring HERS inspections will require all forms to be processed electronically through the registries, like I mentioned a second ago. So when I'm talking about processing the forms through the registries, you're not actually filling out the form on paper and then uploading or scanning the form to the registry. You're going to be entering the information directly into the registry, and then the registry produces the form that you will print out and give to the building inspector, subcontractor, builder, whoever it is that collects them, or you may also download them in soft copy and email it to them. So the three sets of forms that we have are the CF1Rs, the CF2Rs, and the CF3Rs. The CF1R is the certificate of compliance. So this is the form that's either filled out by the person using the prescriptive package table or by the energy analyst by using the computer. Documents will need to be done in order to comply with the building energy efficiency standards by summarizing what HERS verifications are required and the targets for those verifications. It's generated at the beginning of the process and submitted as part of the permit application. It's typically generated, like I said, by the energy consultant, but it's certified electronically by the builder in the registry. So the form will be again uploaded into the registry. And from there, it creates all the targets and the other forms that the HERS rater and subcontractors will need to be filled out. And that's an example of the front page of the new CF1R for residential new construction. So as you can see in the very front page, and this is just a highlight of it, there's a section that's going to say the building complies, and then HERS measures are required for this particular building. And then in the back of it, there'll be pages of a summary. There'll be a summary of what HERS measures are actually required.
And so this is what the HERS feature summary will look like. And it's going to be located, page 3 or right around there, depending on the particular CF1R performance document. And so it's broken down into a couple of different sections. Now this example on the screen doesn't have all of the potential HERS verifications, but it's got quite a few of them on there. But it breaks them down by building level verifications, cooling system verifications, heating system verifications, HVAC distribution system verifications, and domestic hot water system verifications. So it breaks it down into the different systems of the house and where that particular HERS feature applies. So this is what you would use if it is a performance method. This would be your first clue as to what HERS inspections are going to need to be required.
Now the CF2R is the certificate of installation. Now up to this point, the CF2R in the older code cycles was referred to as the CF6R. So if you ever hear that term CF6R, that is basically the equivalent of the CF2R under the new code. So you're not going to be saying CF6Rs anymore. All forms under 2013 are going to be called CF2Rs. These are the certificate of installations. These are the forms filled out by the subcontractor, basically certifying that whatever it is that they're installing is matching or exceeding the standards set by the CF1R. So the documents that the installing contractor did to comply with the building energy efficiency standards and requirements of the CF1R, like I stated. It's completed by the installing contractor when the work has been completed. And keep in mind there are CF2Rs required even when there are no HERS verifications. So there's a lot of forms in Title 24. Some of those forms are HERS forms and some of those are not. Even if there are no HERS verifications, there are still forms filled out by the subcontractors that are required, whether there are HERS verifications required or not. When there are HERS verifications required, even the forms that don't require HERS verifications are required to be uploaded by the contractor into the registry. So in some cases, it may be completely by the HERS rater or on behalf of the installer, but it still needs to be signed by the installer. So there are situations where the subcontractor might contract the rater to fill out the forms for him. However, the subcontractor is still required to sign the forms because they still hold the liability for the form, regardless whether the HERS rater is actually filling it out or not. The CF3R is a certificate of field verification and diagnostic testing. So this is the form that's actually filled out and signed by the rater, and it's the form that's QA to make sure that it's filled out properly by the Cheers QA. So this is the form that the HERS rater is ultimately responsible for. The CF3R used to be called the CF4R in the older code cycles. So again, if you hear the form CF4R, don't get confused. That's just what the CF3R used to be called in 2008. In the 2008 code cycle and before. 2013 moving forward, it's called the CF3R. So the HERS rater fills this out, and it's the certification that the tested energy features match or exceed the requirements of the CF1R. It's filled out after a CF2R is completed, and the results of the field verification are entered by the rater in the registry, and then the CF3R is published. If sampling is used, the CF3R is still produced for all lots, tested or sampled. So we'll talk about sampling in a little bit. But basically, the HERS rater doesn't test every single home. They test one out of X amount of homes, and I mentioned that before in other PowerPoints. But basically, whether the home was tested or not, a CF3R, it's still produced by the HERS rater. The difference is the fact that the CF3R for the home that was actually tested, we'll say tested, and then we'll have obviously all the test information. And then the home that was sampled will have a CF3R. It's not going to have any test information, but it's going to have a checkbox that says passed as part of sample testing. So either way, every single lot will have an individual CF3R with an individual address on it, whether it was tested or sampled.
All right, so let's do a little review on the documentation process when HERS measures are included. So first we're going to start there in the upper left hand corner. You have two options. Either you're going to have the compliance analyst when using the performance method. They're going to use the approved software to generate an output file. That file is then imported into the HERS provider's registry, and the registry will then generate that registered CF1R document. On the other side, if you're using the prescriptive method, the user will need to log into the registry. They'll input all of their information into the form within the registry itself. They'll sign that form, and then the registry will generate that registered document. The installer will then use that information from the CF1R to bid for the job, purchase equipment and materials, as they'll use that to know what values and efficiencies the equipment materials will need to be. They'll do their installation, and now they're going to document that installation on the CF2R. And to do that, again, they're going to log into the registry, they're going to enter their data onto the form, sign it, and then the registry will produce that registered document. And then last, the HERS rater follows that same process. They're going to review the CF2Rs so they know what items they're going to be verifying. They're going to perform their verifications, collect their data, log into the registry, input that data into the CF3R form, and then sign it, and the registry will produce that registered document. Those documents can then be provided to the builder and building department for inspections, either by just allowing or adding that builder or inspector as a member on the project. The inspectors, they're going to have access to anything within their jurisdiction in the registry, so they can log in and see. We also have what's called a project status report that you can download, and some building departments, that's all they want to see. So there's a couple different ways, but they will need to have access to those materials in order to perform the final inspection on the home.
So now let's talk about HERS diagnostic inspections. So these are the actual inspections that as HERS raters you have to be able to execute in the field for the purpose of meeting Title 24 compliance.
As we mentioned earlier, some of these HERS verifications are mandatory. You have to do them regardless of whether you're using the performance or the prescriptive method. The only time that they wouldn't apply is if the type of equipment that was installed, for example, duct leakage would only apply if a ducted HVAC system was installed. If it's ductless, then we don't do duct leakage testing. So we have 5 different mandatory HERS verification measures, and that would be duct leakage, fan watt draw, cooling coil airflow, return duct and air filter device design, and whole building and local mechanical ventilation. So these, if it exists or is present in the home, it's going to apply regardless of performance versus prescriptive. Now, on the other hand, we do have several items that are prescriptively required, but if you use the performance method, you can decide not to utilize that measure. You will be penalized, but you could take it off. For example, if you don't want to perform the refrigerant charge measurement, the person that does the performance run, they can take that off and run, and if it still complies, then they can build the home, and when the HERS rater goes out to perform that verification, they would only be doing, for example, the quality insulation installation and whole house fan, and not the refrigerant charge. Now, the other thing with these prescriptive method measures, as we mentioned, they can be sometimes climate zone specific. So if we look at refrigerant charge, it's only required prescriptively in climate zones 2 and 8 through 15. Whole house fans is going to be climate zones 8 through 14. And then QII, or quality insulation installation, that's going to be required in all climate zones. So in addition to the mandatory and prescriptive measures, we also have a much larger list of performance compliance options. Now, these are credits that the energy analyst, if you're using a performance method, these are additional credits that they can take to improve the score of the home, to bring it into compliance. So we'll go through that list here. There's, like I mentioned, there's quite a few of them, and we'll go through each of these in detail later on in this training. So we'll start with supply duct location, surface area, and R value, verified duct system design, energy efficiency ratio, and seasonal energy efficiency ratio. These are more commonly referred to as SEER and EAR, or SEER and EER. Low leakage air handlers, pipe insulation credit, central parallel piping, compact hot water distribution system, expanded credit. They also have a basic. That one's not HERS verified, just the expanded credit. Water heating recirculating systems, drain water heat recovery systems, building air leakage, or more commonly called the blower door test, and then existing conditions for performance alterations. Now this is, again, on the performance side. If you're doing an alteration, the energy consultant can take credit for the improvement of the building. Say you have, only R11 in your walls, and you're going to be opening all those up, tearing out the old insulation, and putting R19 in the walls. So this allows them some additional credit that they can take advantage of when improving an existing building.
So let us know if you have any questions via the messaging system, or shoot us an email or give us a call. There was definitely a lot of information covered in this PowerPoint, and this is new material to you. I would be surprised if there was no questions. So feel free to reach out to us, or save your questions for the field training, so you'll be able to ask the questions to your field trainer.